Hey guys, my name is Brandon and welcome to or welcome back to my YouTube channel. If you like what you see in here, you're more than welcome to hit the subscribe button so you stay notified every time I upload a new video. Okay, let's get straight on with today's video. Hey everyone and welcome back to Is That More Brandon. So in today's video I'm going to be doing a review for the third episode of The Apprentice. We've now lost a third person in the boardroom, so I thought I'd just quickly explain how and who. So without further ado, let's get straight on with what the actual task was. So at the beginning of the episode, we found out that obviously virtual escape rooms was the title of the episode, and obviously we only had 16 candidates left in the process. So the candidates had 20 minutes to get to Outernet, which is a gaming venue in London. And Sam basically said to Maura, hopefully the boys don't bring them down, with Maura saying that, well, there's more brains and beauty between the girls on their team. Asif said that he was wearing his lucky aftershave, and he seems to be aging like fine wine, although he doesn't drink wine, and he's 35 years young, because I think he had his birthday the day before they were obviously due to do that challenge. And for their challenge, they had to create a virtual escape room concept, a playable demo, and obviously do a pitch to clients to see how much they would invest in the game. Obviously the team that had the lowest investment or the least amount of investment would obviously be in the boardroom. And straight away, obviously Lord Sugar wasn't there, he was obviously on the virtual screen. So Karen basically explained that Trey, Paul and Steve were going to be moving over to the girls team, and Maura, Amina, Onyeka and Sam all going to be moving over to the boys team. So 3 of the boys are on the girls team and 4 of the girls are now on the boys team, so it's a little bit more mixed. And I think straight away the most important part was obviously me as a viewer trying to remember who's on what team, but also as them, they had to decide a team name for their team. So straight away for the boys team, Asif said to the new girls, welcome to the team. And then for the girls team, Noor said that she was excited to get on with the next challenge. And both Paul and Flo here said that they wanted to put themselves forward for project manager. So I think Flo said she has experience in this department. She doesn't necessarily have experience with playing games, but I think she kind of knows, she knows what kind of concepts and things would work. And then Paul M said that he's also played escape room games, and yeah, he feels like he'd be able to put himself forward, and he kind of has an idea already. I think Flo actually said she does play games, so I think she said, yeah, along with Paul, I also play games, but I also have an idea for a concept for the game. And basically they went for a vote. Flo got the most votes, so she became the project manager. And she said she's going to be whipping the whip for her team. And the number one thing is obviously teamwork, making sure they're coming together. Yes, they're not going to agree on everything, but to just still be able to work together. And I think here as well, I'm not going to say there was a bit of competition between Paul and Flo, but I guess they both wanted to be project manager, and obviously it seems like Flo's got a louder voice, or maybe Paul's just a little bit more reserved, but she obviously, yeah, she was doing more of the talking in that morning meeting. With the boys team, so Asif said that, he put himself as project manager anyway. He was kind of, pleading to Lord Sugar in the previous challenge that he wasn't going to let Lord Sugar down, and he felt like there was going to be some sort of flat hierarchy, which I don't know what that means. I don't know if that means everyone's on the same level, or he's literally going to put people on like a level hierarchy. And again, they were coming up with their team name. So Onyeka said something like the Avengers, but obviously I guess you can't really call yourself that after the name of a show. Maura said something like Piranha or Prana. Jack said potentially Super-Ream. So like Supreme, the word Supreme, but to spell it Soup-Ream, so like super and ream. Don't know if that's just an Essex thing. Probably would have been better for the other team because Sam's on that team. And then, actually no, she's on the same team as Jack. And then, yeah, for the girls team, so Steve came up with the name of Nexus, because obviously connecting people together. Nexus is some sort of creating thing. So they all kind of agreed on that straight away. And Paul M, or Paul actually, there's only one Paul left now, he basically said potentially some sort of gaming idea that he had involved some pulling a sword out of a stone, of some medieval game. And I think here Flo just kind of, I'm not going to say spoke over him, but I guess there is some sort of time restraint with these meetings, and you can't, be in these meetings all day long. So she then stepped in and said her game was going to be something to do with medieval, something to do with stopping the Black Plague, lots of stones, lots of, darker kind of colours. And Paul M said to the camera that he basically just said, look, I know it's her task, I know, she's the project manager, but she needs to let other people collaborate with her. It can't just be all about her, otherwise what's the point of having the team there? And then for the boys team, Jack basically said he thinks they potentially could have a game where characters move into the countryside world, lots of random animals, and potentially, you know, they get in a buggy and then somehow the character obviously jumps on a boat. Phil also said that, you know, him, Onyeka and Jack were all throwing loads of different ideas, but it's Asif that needs to actually come up with making a decision, not just, you know, let someone else do the job for him. And Onyeka said, well, no, Asif said that Onyeka was going to be the sub-team leader with Sam, Phil and Jack. They were all going to be creating the game. The rest of the team were obviously going to be doing the designing and the logos. For the girls team, so with Flo, she said she's definitely going to be on the, I think the gamings team, just purely because of the fact that it's her idea, it's her game, her concept. And I think there was about 4 people that wanted to be on the design team. So I think you had Faluso, Noor, Trey and Raj. So all 4 of them wanted to be on. And Flo basically said, right, Rachel, you're the team sub-team leader for the design team with Trey, Raj and Faluso. Obviously Noor then jumped in and said, well, hang on, I wanted to be on the branding as well. I definitely think I'm, you know, in the wrong team. And she basically said, well, you know, I can't put everyone on the design team, it's got to be half and half, and unfortunately I just didn't pick you this time, unfortunately. So I guess here Noor's kind of been shut down already. Task hasn't even started, but she's already been put in the wrong team. And then Flo basically said to her team, I'm not losing, as if, she, you know, the girls have already won 2 games in a row. So yes, they've got a few boys on their team that potentially could mess it up, but, you know, put the boys to the side, let the girls take control, and then you should be fine. But actually, no, I think Trey, Steve and Paul are 3 of the good guys. I'm not saying the rest of them are bad, I'm just saying they're 3 that I don't think would be problematic, so that's fine. And then Paul basically said to the people he was in a taxi with, they shouldn't make the game too easy and they shouldn't make the game too hard. And Steve said, when in doubt, go with the Flo. So making a joke there about Flo, because obviously they were in the taxi with Flo. Back to the boys team, so this is Asif's team, Team Supreme. They were coming up with a name for their escape room game. Asif says something like Wrecked. Verdi said something like Escape the Countryside, which sounds a bit like a TV show according to some of them. And then Asif came up with the name Running Out of Time, Fallen, and then Amelia jumped in with the words Fallen Escape. So they just thought, yeah, actually, we'll go with that. So I think the only issue here, going with a name like Fallen Escape, you need to make sure there's actually some sort of form of element of falling and some sort of form of element of escaping. Otherwise, the title will just not make sense. And then for the other team, so Rachel came up with the name Medieval Escape. Trey said it's quite a safe option, but it's quite obvious what the actual game is. And then Rachel said, obviously from Flo's brief, they needed to use kind of like gold, stone sort of colours as part of their branding and the logo. Faluso also jumped in here, said, I have a bit of a specific idea. So they'd already got the gold, you know, bronze stone look, and she wanted to try and put a little bit of red at the bottom of the letters just to see if that would work. The rest of them said it didn't really work, but she said, I think it just, you know, adds something to it. It is still a bit boring. And it does look quite bland, but at least it's, you know, not just gold text, it's gold text with a little bit of like, you know, I don't know, like soil or something, or like, I don't know, pirate blood, I'm not sure. And then Raj basically said that they shouldn't really add anything else, like logos or anything, or photos or graphics, because they don't want to mess up what they've already got. Falusa said she also wouldn't buy this particular game if it had that branding on it, just because of the fact it didn't look appealing. So hopefully that won't go against them when they do their pitching and, you know, secondary research and things like that. In terms of the boys teams, this is back to Asif again. He said, well, he was designing the logo, and I think him and Verdi basically came up with the idea of having arrows on 2 of the E's, so Fallen Escape, so that the E of Fallen and the second E of Escape, or the first E of Escape, I'm not 100% sure. They had one arrow point one way, one arrow point the other way, as if like there's 2 different directions you can escape out of the game. Flo and her team, she basically described the game to her team saying, you know, you have to collect the potions around the different land in order to find potions to kind of cure the Black Plague. So the way she kind of described it, it kind of looked like an old-fashioned building or like an old-fashioned castle where you go around, you find clues, you know, you find like a crown and food and whatever else you need. You look at the book, the letter of the alphabet matches the number of the book, and then you've obviously solved the riddle. And she basically said, yeah, throughout the game you get ingredients, you end up in the dining room, and then, yeah, you know, you've saved everyone because they're all standing up and they've all been resolved. And then Noor basically jumped in here and said, you need to have something a little bit more fun. And I think Paul jumped in, as well as Flo, basically saying, well, you know, I think Steve as well, saying medieval games are not all about having fun. Sometimes they are a little bit gruesome, a little bit boring, or a little bit, you know, historic and old-fashioned, because that's just the time of when these games have been created. And then back to Onyeka and the boys team again. So her, Phil, Sam and Jack were all creating the game. And I think Onyeka went on a bit of a wild one here. She basically described an entire, you know, concept of a film as what their game was going to be, with like the plane crash. And then the character has to find equipment, ends up at a petrol station, gets petrol, and then somehow is survived on a boat after, you know, getting away from grizzly bears. So it was a little bit of lots of things going on. And I think Sam jumped in and said, well, hang on guys, is this not a little bit complicated? Like, there's just too many aspects going on. And I think they basically just said, no, but I think this is okay. With Trey's team, he basically decided so he wanted to be the main character, because he said, being from an ethnic background, you kind of want to have something that's, you know, relatable to potential audiences. And yeah, he put himself as the main character, saying that, you know, the guy's a good-looking character, tall, dark and handsome, but he doesn't want to have any grey hairs. And Raj said, well, 40-year-olds still have grey hair, and he basically said, I'm nearly 50 and I don't have any grey hairs. So yeah, a little bit of banter there, but that was quite nice to see. But yeah, it was nice to see him put himself forward as the main character. He was also doing the voiceover. So yeah, he was the main character for the girls' team. Back to the boys' team. So their character was a female character with blonde hair, short hair. She kind of looked like she was in a military outfit. And then Maura was actually their voiceover. So she did the little introduction as if like, come on, we're gonna go and save the world, or whatever it was. But it kind of sounds like they're about to go into battle. They're not about to escape an escape room. Verdi basically then said a whole pitch saying, you know, there's always a way to escape, like if you think you can do it, you can do it. It's like a really motivational, deep, thought out little poem thing. Asif loved it, the girls kind of agreed with it, and then they obviously did that. I'm not sure how much of it they actually used it, of it. And he basically said here, I'm not just a DJ, like, you know, I've got some good words as well. Back to the girls' team again, so Flo, Steve and Paul were all obviously discussing and designing in the game. Nor was obviously looking on, but again she kind of just said to her, look, we just need some extra aspects. We need, you know, maybe like a yacht or something outside, or maybe some ghosts, or just maybe something that just makes the game a little bit more fun. And they all basically said there's not really much time to add loads of extra things. They've kind of got their idea now, they have to just run with it. And then, yeah, Nor basically said to the camera that she feels like there was lots of potential things that they could have added to the game to make it more fun, and at the moment it's obviously quite boring. And also it kind of seems like now it's the second time she's been shut down. So not only was she not allowed to go onto the designing team for like the logo and the branding, but also on the gaming team, any ideas that she's putting forward are just getting shut down. So whether or not she has to speak up a bit more, or whether or not those louder ones have to calm down and actually let other people have ideas, I don't know, it's a bit of a balance. I think she's going to be okay. I think she's going to survive a few more weeks, but I don't know, until she becomes like project manager and actually, like, you know, proves herself and has like a massive win, for me she's just kind of one of the floaters. But yeah, I think she needs to speak up, or the louder ones need to come down. But I've got good feelings for her. Let's just see how far she gets. And then back to the boys team. So Onyeka, Paul, Jack and Sam, they were all obviously discussing the game. Jack said that some of the game seems a little bit complicated. Oh no, Sam said some of the game seems a bit complicated, and she's not sure if it's just because she doesn't understand or play virtual games, but she's just kind of go along with it. The other three of them agreed it was actually all okay. Back to the girls team, Verdi said that they should focus on the performance of the game itself. So this is when Maura was doing her little voiceover part, and he basically just said, look, it's your time, it's your moment. I think she was messing up the words a little bit, or she wasn't able to memorise the words that she had on the script. And Maura basically just said, look, you know, I'm just a character, just speaking my lines, I'm just doing a little quick introduction. He's making out like it's some massive drama piece. She just wants to get the intro of the game done so they can move on to something else. So I think she just wanted to get it done. He kind of wanted it to be perfect, and Asif was kind of just standing there like, I'm just gonna let you get on with and do whatever you need to do. In terms of the feedback on the logo, so Jack initially said, well, you know, it kind of looks like a supermarket logo. Sam said it's not the most exciting. So bear in mind they've created the game, and they're now obviously seeing the logos for the first time, the other half of the teams. And then with the girls team, Flo said it was a great job, that it looked great, it followed the brief. And Nor again jumped in saying it just looks very basic, and it literally just was words with a little bit of red in it. Rachel said that they could have added something else on like a logo, but they decided not to, otherwise it would make it a little bit more complicated. And then back for the boys team, Jack said he wasn't really sure what the game entails, with Verdi saying, well, you know, you don't really want to know what the game's about when you start a game or you watch a trailer, you kind of want to find that out a bit later on. And then Asif and Phil kind of both agreed that the character is in your inner voice, so it's not necessarily, you're not playing the game to play the game, you're playing the game as someone else, like a different entity or like an outside person. Yeah, and then you obviously it's your inner character coming out basically in the game. So yeah, a bit of a weird concept there. I'm not 100% sure what they mean by that, about the character's the inner voice. Like, it's what you're wanting to think, but it's coming out as the character. But yeah, the actual game doesn't really make sense with title of the game and the actual game itself. It's a little bit, yeah, it doesn't really work. And then, yeah, with the girls team again, Flo basically said, thank you guys for sticking to the brief. Paul then tried to explain the story of what the actual game demo was about. Obviously, Faluso said, it just seems to be very simple, find items, save people, there's not many clues, hints or tips along the way. And then Flo basically completed the rest of the demo and said that she was happy with the branding, the logo, and obviously the game demo actually all aligned. So although it was simple, and yes, although there was errors, and you know, although the branding was very simple, sometimes simple was better than overcomplicating something, because then you just, you know, you just confuse people. With the boys team, they were obviously discussing the game. So Rachel and Verdi were kind of having a discussion about what the actual game was about. So they were basically both doing the little demonstration. And Verdi didn't even realise that the character at the end could dance on the boat. But basically added that the game doesn't really make sense. Sam, obviously in her little taxi of 4, she said that she was happy to team lead because they obviously didn't have a team leader decided by Asif. Asif actually then called their taxi and said he'd like Phil to be sub-team leader. So yeah, Sam said, pressure's on you now, Phil. And I think Asif and the people he was in the taxi with were still on the phone, so they heard that and obviously had a little giggle. Then we came to feedback. So for the girls team, which was obviously Team Flo, they basically said that there wasn't really much escaping. The actual game itself was very simple and the brand and logo seems very unfinished. For the boys team, it was Sam, Jack, Phil and Maura, and Jack was asking most of the questions here, asking, you know, what do you think about the game, what do you think about the trailer, how long would you play the game for? They said that the intro video part was boring, the game had no relation to the logo, they're not sure if something was either missed out or they missed out part of the storyline, and one of the guys even said he'd only play the game for 5 minutes and then ask for a refund. Sam basically said that, you know, some of them were a little bit confused about what actually happened in that session. So yeah, they kind of need to make the actual game concept a bit more clear. Otherwise, you know, they're not gonna do well later on. Back to the girls team. So Rachel said again that her group that she was doing research with said that they weren't sure about the game, who's escaping and what are they actually escaping, and Steve basically explained that it's more than just escaping from something, and they need to basically explain that there's a reason for them to escape, with Raj saying that some of the players actually thought the game was quite relaxing. With an escape room you kind of usually have like a time limit, or you know, a zombie chasing you or whatever, but they just seemed like they could just walk around forever and there's going to be no, you know, nothing chasing them and nothing trying to like kill them or whatever. And then it was time for each team to go in for their pitch. So first was the girls team, so Team Nexus. So it was Flo, Steve, Paul and Trey. I think it was a very, very good idea. Flo was obviously the project manager, Trey was obviously the voice, Paul was kind of like Flo's secondary voice, and then Steve, I think he's really, really confident. I think he's good at answering questions. Like I said, he is really hot anyway. So, you know, brains, beauty and good business attire. So I think the 4 of them worked well together. So at first, Flo was obviously discussing, saying the gaming market usually brings in about £2.1 billion a year. And then I think she wanted to go on to a different point, but she kind of forgot where she was going. So she kind of stumbled upon her words for a few seconds and then managed to get back to say, look, now I'm going to introduce you to the game. Paul then actually started demonstrating the game, where he was going around finding the different items and ingredients, like the crown, for example, the spell book, and then explaining how obviously you get to the end and then cure everyone from the plague. And then the CEO from Little Lions, called Tom, said, where is the fun, where is the sense of fun and engagement in this game? And Paul basically said it's the dopamine hit with overcoming all of the challenges. And then kind of, as a viewer, what I was thinking was, I'm like, well, what sort of challenges are you talking about? Like, there's no challenges here in this game. It's more, the only challenge is you going to find the ingredients, but that's not really a mini challenge within the game. Like if you had to jump over a wall or something, that's a little bit of a challenge, but it just seemed like they were just walking around and there was no sort of danger in their way. So yeah, I guess it's a bit of a, it was just a kind of quick answer that they had, I guess. Julia Charles, event management from Julia Charles. She basically said there wasn't really any punchy moments. And Steve basically said they were obviously introducing the characters like just at the beginning, so they're going to have to get used to the characters. And then Julia basically said, look, you know, this is when you need to capture my attention at the beginning, because if you don't catch my attention at the beginning, I'm going to fall asleep, and you know, I'm not gonna want to play the game. And she basically said, if you're going to go for some sort of medieval game style escape room like this, there are so many different paths and avenues you can go, and she basically said to them, don't play it safe. You have to sometimes take a risk, you have to sometimes do something that you don't think is going to work, take that risk, and then hopefully that obviously pays off. And yeah, they obviously had a little discussion between themselves, saying that it was a strong visual of the game, strong narrative, but there was obviously no hints, no help along the way, and it didn't really come across as quite fun. And then for the boys team, so this is Team Supreme, or Supreme. So Verdi, Onyeka, Asif and Amina went in. Again, I think Verdi, Onyeka, both good speakers. Asif, is a good speaker, he was just kind of there. And then again with Amina, again, I don't know, I didn't really see much of her in the first two tasks. And it was nice to see her on the stage. It was a bit of a shock. I was like, oh, Amina's up there. So yeah, again, but she kind of was just like a bit of a lost puppy. She kind of was just there, didn't really say much. And then when she did speak, it kind of didn't really make sense. But yeah, so Asif introduced it straight away, saying it felt like they were on an old military island. And Onyeka straight away said that this is their demo, which is currently in draft mode, which again, the ones that weren't doing the pitch were basically like, well, hang on, she basically put her foot in it, saying she doesn't really believe in it because it's a demo, it's a draft, and you know, it's almost like, I think Phil basically said it, he basically said, yeah, it's almost like, I don't believe in the game, but actually let me just tell you why I love it, kind of thing. So anyway, she went on to discuss the game with the petrol station, the grizzly bears, and you know, being able to obviously be saved and things at the end. With Julia basically shouting out, "That's brilliant," but obviously I'm not sure if that was in a sarcastic way or a good way. And then the CEO of Little Lions again, so Tom basically just shouted, "That was bananas," and he basically asked them whether this was the part of the pitch that literally could have gone one way or the other. He basically said, "Are you trying to make some sort of, you know, non-realistic kind of game, or do you generally really think this is like, you know, military focused and a really serious type of game?" And I think Sam, obviously outside, was kind of whispering to the other ones, saying, you know, say it's surreal, say it's, you know, part of an experience and it's something new that you're not going to achieve and whatever. And then Asif said, no, this is realistic, this is, you know, based on real life activities, things like that. And luckily Onyeka did jump in, so obviously she has kind of contradicted him at this point, but she said it's not supposed to be realistic, it's supposed to be something that, you know, you don't experience, something that you're not, you know, going to be able to see on normal military life, and it's something that's not supposed to be realistic. So they both kind of went against each other, but I guess eventually she kind of did save his butt. One of the clients, or one of the people on the panel, basically said the game had nothing to do with falling, and I think this is where Verdi jumped in and said, yeah, well, the fall is at the beginning where you fall out of the plane, or you know, crash out of the plane, and then obviously you escape later on. I think with the word fallen, it's like, are you going to fall again later on? So I think it's more of it builds up tension, or it builds up, like, you know, the moment. And he was like, well, I feel like we don't even have that moment. So yeah, a little bit not happy from them. And then Amina jumped in here and said the letters of the word, the letters of the logo came together as a bit of a symbol. You got the two E's together. It didn't really make much sense, and she looked quite nervous as a bit of a missing piece. And then again, the four panellists came together and said that they weren't bored of the other pitch. It was a bit more fun, a bit more exciting. At this one, it was kind of a bit boring. And then Julia said that they should have gone out of this world with their idea, rather than just something that's very simple, like petrol station, grizzly bear, boat, whatever. And then Flo said to her girls and the boys in her team, you all smashed it, with Paul saying if we lose, it's obviously Flo's responsibility, because it was all her idea for branding, her idea for everything. So he was going to put the blame straight on her straight away. So in the boardroom, straight away, Flo explained that her idea was to have the concept of a village in a medieval town, find items for the Black Plague cure, and obviously all the guests and people in the town will obviously be happy. Paul M said that he designed the game, and obviously he also made sure that Steve jumped in just to make sure that everything was actually okay. Sometimes it's better to have two heads and two brains rather than just the one. And then Steve basically added that some of Nor's ideas were not taken forward, with Karen jumping in saying no, none of her ideas were taken on. So the fact that she wanted to be in the design team, and that got disapproved straight away, and then with the actual designing of the game, she still couldn't have her opinion, or she could, but everything was just shut down. And then Paul gave a live demonstration of the game, showing you how to play the game, how to collect the items, and how to obviously save the town. Lord Sugar said it's basically not anything like the Game of Thrones, it's more like, he described it as something else, but I didn't quite catch what he said. And Trey said that the character kind of had more of a USP, like a kind of Lara Croft vibe. And yeah, Flo said that she did the pitch. She had a little bit of a nervous stumble, and yeah, they basically said, the panelists said that they liked Trey and Steve. So from the pitch, Trey and Steve were I guess the two strongest ones. And I guess, yeah, like I said, Steve is a confident public speaker, it seems. I guess Trey's like kind of comedy, kind of funny, kind of, you know, witty. So I guess both of those guys are really, really good. And then for the boys team, so this is for Team Asif. So they basically discussed what their brainstorm was like in the morning. Sam jumped in straight away, said the brainstorm was not clarity clear. They weren't exactly sure what they needed to do. Asif said he gave them a broad concept of an escape room from obviously where he stands. And Lord Sugar basically jumped in saying that this game had obviously been done, well, no, Asif said that the medieval type of game had been done many times before. He liked the game, but yeah, he wasn't really a fan of it, talking about the other team. Onyeka then did a little demonstration of their game, and Lord Sugar asked why the guy in the game, why the character would be dancing, because he's just run away from grizzly bears, he's on a boat, he wants to escape, he doesn't want to just, you know, have a little boogie. And Asif replied saying it was probably the adrenaline rush that made him dance. Onyeka said that she seemed to have more experience of games and games rooms, so, you know, she'll take responsibility for the game itself, but she was the only one that actually, you know, put her ideas and things forward. And Phil basically added that she did actually take control. Asif said that in terms of the logo, it was kind of like explaining that there was potentially two different routes you could go out of the game, but I guess in the actual game, you don't see the two routes, you just see the boat. That is the only route, or you die. And then Lord Sugar basically said instead of falling escape, it's more of falling asleep. Kind of like, I guess he got bored as well, playing or watching. He wasn't even playing the game, he was just watching it. And then in the end, for the boys team, Asif, they actually ended up getting £50,000 for future development for their game. And then Karen basically admitted that for the girls team, so Team Flo, they loved the narrative, they loved the character, which was obviously Trey's idea, and they actually invested £170,000 for a future development of that particular game. So as much as both games were a little bit naff, it just seems like Flo's team's game was just that little bit less naff, and that's why their team won, Team Nexus, and they were all off to go to the Lara Croft Tomb Raider experience, and yeah, they were obviously very, very happy about that. Nor, she did say that if they would have stuck to Flo's brief and then done a little bit extra, it could have been even better than what they already planned, or what they had already done. Trey did a little cheers to Leo, which I think was the name of the character, and he was glad that his character, you know, was good and it came to life. Yeah, so in terms of the boys team, plus some of the, obviously the girls, both Maura and Phil were not really sure what they were doing after their morning meeting. Asif said they shouldn't have had bears in the game, like that's not realistic at all. Sam explained there was lots of confusing things with the game, and you know, there was an opportunity to switch people from different teams. Amina was on the wrong team, she shouldn't have been on the public speaking team. And Jack also added that, you know, it felt like there were three of them pitching rather than four. It was like three and a spare part, so it's not necessarily Amina's fault. Sometimes people are not, you know, good at the public speaking thing, but at the same time, if you're going to want to go into business, you're going to have to be able to speak to people, and if you're on a team, you kind of just need to put the people forward who you think are actually going to be good within that particular role. So yeah, I guess there was a little bit of, not slagging off, but a little bit of, you know, analysis from both Sam and Jack there, that they weren't happy. Not that they weren't happy with Amina, but she shouldn't have been in the public speaking part of the team. All of them came back into the boardroom, and Lord Sugar said that Asif obviously pleaded to be the project manager, and he basically said it was a novel concept which landed pretty well with the investors, said that he wanted to keep the game serious and not have it as a bonkers game. And then Tim basically jumped in, because I think Lord Sugar asked Tim, well, how much would they have put in if they would have just said it was bonkers, and they would have actually invested another £100,000, which would have meant they still wouldn't have won, but they would have had a little bit of a less bad loss, but they would have had at least an extra 100,000 to actually invest within the game. And then again, Onyeka basically said here that she tried to jump in on the pitch. As soon as Asif said it wasn't a bonkers game, she tried to save him and go, yeah, actually it was supposed to be something surreal. But yeah, obviously I think at that point the damage was already done. And then Lord Sugar said that it kind of sounds like with their intro that they were obviously going into battle. Phil added there's no correlation with the intro to actually the game itself. And it felt like at times he was also trying to manage Asif in order to make decisions, because he was kind of just sitting there letting everyone else speak and not actually coming up with, you know, a final decision. And then Lord Sugar asked Asif who he wanted to bring back to the boardroom. So he wanted to bring back Onyeka and he wanted to bring back Sam. He basically just said that he was bringing back Sam purely because lack of contribution, and she basically questioned him saying, are you being serious? So he said, actually, can I change? So he then changed and said he wanted to bring back Onyeka and Amina. And then Amina basically looked at him and said, well, hang on, why are you bringing me back? Because I actually saved you in the pitch, I saved you in this task. And then, yeah, Lord Sugar was just like, oh, well, I'm really confused what you're doing. I'm really confused. Like, there's just too many names and things going on. So I'm going to bring back all 4 of you. So Asif, Sam, Onyeka and Amina. So, yeah, Asif's picked the 3 girls on his team. So I don't know maybe if he sees all of them as competition or if he genuinely thinks that they actually didn't perform on that task. And then obviously Karen and Tim gave their little, you know, analysis on the 4 that were coming back. So Karen said about Asif that he has no synergy, and in terms of the project, it was completely his responsibility. Tim said about Onyeka that she took responsibility for the game, and obviously it was the game that kind of made the task fail. Karen said about Sam that he only brought Sam back because he didn't like what she said about him in the meeting room. Nothing to do with actually what she didn't do in the game or in the project even, because she was being vocal and she was actually engaged with the task. And then Tim said about Amina that she froze on stage and she kind of really added no value to the pitch. So, you know, sometimes I guess putting yourself out of your comfort zone does kind of backfire, but at least she tried. At least she got onto the stage. It was only in front of 4 people, but at least she tried. And then Lord Sugar asked Asif straight away why he felt like he brought Sam back, and he said, well, in terms of Sam's contributions, she wasn't really on the same level as everyone else. And she stood up straight away and said, you know, this is not my field, I'm not in the gaming world at all, but I still gave my 100%. And Onyeka actually joined in and said, well, actually, where she could add a bit of, you know, where she was able to add some knowledge and experience, she was able to, and she did put herself forward. So I guess Onyeka has Sam's back at that point. And Onyeka said that she, again, like I said about what she said before, she said that she was the only one with experience in this type of field, so that although she didn't want to be the project manager and couldn't, because Asif already put himself in that place, she still put herself forward. And she admitted here that she knows the game wasn't perfect, but they didn't like the branding of the game. The brief was also not clear, there was no concept, and the logo was just not great either. And then Amina basically said to Asif that he's got really, really low standards if he felt like the logo was good. With Karen and Lord Sugar basically both adding, well, hang on, Amina, you were also creating the logo, so if you're not saying it's good, then actually you're criticising yourself and that your own work's not good. And then Asif at the end basically said, well, no, Amina said she liked the logo, so, you know, I'm going to stick with my word. Like, yes, the logo wasn't great, but she said she was happy with it, and I was happy with it, so at that point we just, you know, did it. And then Lord Sugar did a little bit of analysis of the 4. He said, you know, he felt like Sam did do something in the challenge, so she's going to be safe. Onyeka took over the designing of the game, and obviously that was the bit of the problem. Amina, there was things that she did that wasn't very good, such as the designing was obviously one of those, and also I guess the public speaking on stage. And then Asif claimed that he's a great leader, but that hasn't come to fruition yet. He said the product was the actual failure of the task, which obviously was down to Onyeka, but again, at the same time, I feel like she has come out of her shell since day one. She was, you know, I guess she's not a good swimmer, but that's not her problem, but she was still very vocal in task 1, very vocal in task 2, and obviously very vocal in this task. So he said, yeah, the failure was with you, but the even worse failure was with Asif. So Asif was fired, and obviously the 3 girls managed to go back to the house. Asif explained that he was gutted, but he's obviously not going to be defeated. He's going to go 1 level up in his business, wherever he wants to go. Jack said that he definitely thinks Sam's going to come back, but not sure about the other 3. And Amina basically again said to the rest of them, you do not want to be in that bottom 3 in the boardroom. So I think everyone that comes back who's not been in the boardroom yet is a bit like, oh my god, you don't want to be here. And then everyone who's not been in the bottom 3, it's almost like, well, I don't know what it's like because I'm not like one of the 3 worst performers in my team. So yeah, that was a bit strange. But yeah, I guess it is a bit of a shock. It's a bit of a shock to the system when you know you've done well, or you think you've done well, you end up in the boardroom, you come back and it's like, oh my god, Lord Sugar actually believes in me. And then knock, knock, knock at the door. Lord Sugar was at the door, so Verdi opened the door. They all had to go sit in the lounge, and he basically explained that the next task was to go to Jersey in the Channel Islands, and apparently this makes 40 million or 40 billion for the United Kingdom or for the UK every year. And he basically said that for the next task, the teams had to source 9 items, buy them at the cheapest price, and the team that did it for the lowest lowest price would obviously win the challenge, and at least one would get fired from the other team. And then Steve basically described it as a treasure hunt on an island. What more could you want? So that's where we're left as of now. We have 15 people left. All 9 girls are still in. We've lost 3 boys so far, so we have 15 people left. I think the teams are still pretty equal at the moment. But yeah, I think I'm just going to say, I think some of my front runners at the moment, like, I mean, if I had to analyse the other 15 people that we've got, so I think Maura's, she's kind of just there. She's very vocal, but she hasn't stepped up to be project manager yet. I think Amina is one of the weaker ones, or not necessarily weak, just quiet, and, you know, maybe the public speaking side's not her forte, but maybe she's better at negotiation, or maybe she's better at, you know, designing or whatever. Onyeka seems quite confident. Sam seems quite confident. Again, I think she is a hard shell. I think, yes, you would assume that she's stupid and clumsy and whatever, but actually she's got a lot of brain cells, and I think she's starting to come out of her shell a little bit more. Jack, I think, is good. Young guy, young lad, probably good at sales and recruitment. I'm sure he'll be fine. Phil, again, seems like he's had experience in that sort of field, so he's a confident guy. I just hope he doesn't get too cocky. I think if he's confident, that's fine, but don't get too cocky. Verdi, I think, is just all over the place, just always so many ideas, so many things to say. Trey, I think, is confident. Paul, I think he's really relaxed and really, you know, to himself, but sometimes that's just as good as someone who's shouting from the rooftops. Steve, I think, is confident, funny, has personality. Faluso, I think she's quite confident as well. Raj, again, seems quite confident. Nora is very quiet, but again, she's trying to speak up a little bit, and again, similar to some of the other girls, she's coming out of her shell. Flo, very confident. I think out of all the girls so far, I think she's probably my favourite. She's the one I think is going to go the furthest. And then Rachel, again, she's kind of just there, a little bit vocal, kind of like Maura, kind of like Onyeka, but, you know, haven't really seen much of her. She hasn't been project manager yet. So that's kind of it for my analysis for episode 3. So if you did enjoy, don't forget to like, comment, chat and subscribe. And until my next review, thank you for watching and goodbye.